Sometime around 1740, the Cheyenne Nation migrated onto the plains along the Missouri River in South Dakota. While still living as traditional woodland Indians, they had been preyed upon for decades by other tribes and nearly driven to extinction. That changed with the Great Horse Dispersal at the beginning of the century. Practically overnight, the Cheyenne became skilled horsemen. Now capable of handling their former enemies, the Sioux and Crow, they became formidable fighters. At the same time, they also became expert buffalo hunters. Adopting the Sioux teepee for living, the Cheyenne warrior hunter bands could now take their families with them when they needed to follow the buffalo. On the plains, the Cheyenne prospered and their numbers grew dramatically. Militarily, their strength also grew, first through an alliance with the Arapaho and later the Sioux. Together they drove the Kiowa and the Crow out of the prized Black Hills of South Dakota. 75 years of nomadic life had turned the Cheyenne into a full-fledged warrior culture. In the early 19th century, the Cheyenne had become so successful they were raiding the large Comanche horse herds south of the Arkansas River. During these raids, many of the Cheyenne fell in love with the region of Kansas and Colorado north of the Arkansas River. It was resplendent with tall grass prairie and buffalo. By 1825, over half of the Cheyenne Nation, joined by many Arapaho, had migrated into this buffalo-rich region permanently. The move was motivated by economics. The Cheyenne chief Yellow Wolf met with the Bent brothers, and together they created a highly lucrative trading partnership centered at Bent's Fort on the Arkansas River. For a time, all seemed well between the Southern Cheyenne and whites. So much so that White Antelope and Alights on the Cloud, two Cheyenne chiefs, met with President Fillmore in 1851 in Washington, D.C., as did another delegation, which included Cheyenne chiefs Warbonnet, Stand in the Water, and Lean Bear, who met with Abraham Lincoln during the height of the Civil War in March 1863. Oddly, soon after this second peace trip, widespread hostilities broke out among many Cheyenne and whites, while other Cheyenne were attempting to change and adopt the lifestyles of the whites. This paradox and confusion would lead to tragedy. After the Minnesota Massacre, where more than 600 settlers were slaughtered by the Santee Sioux in 1862, fear of the Indians on the plains ran high among whites. In Colorado, this fear was brought home on June 11, 1864.
June 9th, 10th, and 11th, there were Indian raids all around this area right here. On June 11th, at this site, the Hungate family was killed. Nathan Ward Hungate, 29 years old, Ellen, 25, and their two daughters, Laura and Florence. Laura not yet 3 and Florence not yet 5 months. They were killed here. Their bodies were then brought into Denver and displayed. They had been mutilated. Nathan was found about a mile or a mile and a half south of here along the creek, Running Creek, Box Elder Creek. These raids were done by Cheyenne, Kiowa, and Arapaho. Later, Arapaho were identified as the perpetrators of this killing, but it was always identified as a small number, maybe 4. But the evidence of the fire at the house in modern archaeology and the weapons found, there's evidence of 8 weapons that were used in a long siege here as they were burned out, shows that it had to be a large party, at least 20, maybe 60, and that they took the time to kill this family. Why did they do that? Probably because Nathan shot one of the Indians who was stealing stock, as there had been stock stolen all around this area on June 9th and 10th. And in all of the reports of these Indians is that they were Arapaho, Kiowa, and Cheyenne. They were all armed, and there was no violence at all. The only violence was here. Violence occurs later in August on the Overland Trail, not far from Colorado and Nebraska, and 53 settlers are killed there. And that, along with the murder of the Hungate family, is what fueled the military expedition and the 3rd Volunteer Colorado Cavalry and Colonel John Chivington to attack Chief Black Kettle Cheyenne Village at Sand Creek on November 29, 1864.
A month earlier, near Fort Larned, Kansas, the Cheyenne chief Lean Bear, just back from his meeting with Lincoln, was gunned down by troopers as he approached, showing the peace medal given to him by the president. Using this attack as an excuse, the Cheyenne dog soldiers made settlers in Kansas and eastern Colorado pay a heavy price. Indeed, this attack added fuel to the raids the Cheyenne had already begun at the same time. In June 1864, Colorado Territorial Governor John Evans issued a proclamation directing friendly Indians to appear at the various U.S. government forts. 2 months later, the great Cheyenne chief Black Kettle requested a meeting with the commander of Fort Lyon, Major Edward Wynkoop. Wynkoop was highly impressed with Black Kettle. He later wrote, "The chief sat, dignified, immovable, with a slight smile on his face." A bond of mutual trust was formed between the two men. As a result, Black Kettle, White Antelope, and Bull Bear, one of the leaders of the dog soldiers, traveled to Denver to meet with Governor Evans and Colonel John M.